Morning. This is the case study for educational law presented by Daniel Frey. I'm going to take you through slide by slide and talk you through the case study. What do you know about our case study? First thing we're going to talk about is our school. We know that might not know what town it is, but we know it's a rich part of town. We know that the students have the latest fashion. We know students have the latest technology. We know they're used to probably getting their way. We know their parents are probably used to getting their way. So probably quite the different school than maybe a lot of us are used to. We know about our principal. Our principal is Dr. Smith. He's been a principal at this school for 9 years. It's a high school. He's been principal of the year 2 years ago. He's respected by the parents, and he himself is focused on his reputation. This is going to be key for us in a couple later slides. We know about Miss Tate. Miss Tate is our teacher in this case study. She's a new science teacher. This is her second year. We know she has a higher level of education beyond just her bachelor's into her master's. She's not as young as others might be. We know that in her class, she has the intent on establishing a structured classroom focused on academics. I feel like some teachers that come out of this come into our field that are strictly on the science side. Maybe not science is the right word, but their field of study definitely have more rigor. I feel also, this is just reading into things, maybe she's a little stubborn and kind of my way or the highway, and change for her is definitely hard, as we'll see in a little bit. What does Miss Tate's class look like? Well, her classes are science classes, upper level science classes, so it looks like. Definitely the load of work is hard, and on top of having maybe more work than others, she's also a tough grader. This puts higher level of stress on the students to perform in her class. What about the parents? Parents of these students. They're definitely upset with Miss Tate. They're upset with the workload. And because of those two things, they've called the principal numerous times with complaints specifically about grading. We also have a character named William Hall. The only information we know about him is in the eyes of Miss Tate. Miss Tate says he does not like her, makes snide comments to his classmates when her back is turned. She has called him very clever, and she knows he helps other students when it comes to computer help. These are all the things that she has observed. Here's our situation. Here's the meat of it. We know Miss Tate gets home from a weekend away. She's 3 hours away. She's at her parents'. She comes to an unidentified email, so it doesn't have a name on it, and it tells her to visit a website. Well, it's a Facebook website, as we find later, and this Facebook website, Facebook page, Facebook stream, I think more of like Twitter being something like this is when I still coach wrestling, but one of my kids made a not Coach Prey account, and kind of not similar to our case study, but just had comments and quotes that I would say, and that had gone on with the kids as kind of a comical joke, I guess. This Facebook page had comments about her personal behavior. It has critical comments about the rigor of her class. It also has highly offensive language. I'm assuming several cuss words are used. And the end of the message, down at the end, assume this is like a string of comments, is the statement, "Who wants Miss Tate to disappear?" After reading this email, Miss Tate follows her chain of command, which I think was very good, calls Dr. Smith, and his initial reaction is to listen, which I think is very good, to take in the information. But then his initial diagnosis is that it's just a prank. He assures her that it's just a prank. And he kind of dives in and thinks about who could have done this, who has wronged her in the last week, who is she upset. And I think it's curious to go back to the last week, or that this is at all the case. Ms. Tate names William Hall as a student that she's had problems with. We saw kind of through Ms. Tate's eyes on the last slide. Dr. Smith tells Ms. Tate he would set up a meeting on Monday. Ms. Tate then drives 3 hours back to her parents' house to sleep there because she feels unsafe. Those are the facts. So now, after reviewing the case study, we need to kind of look at what the issue is. And I think there's a ton of stuff that could have been handled differently. But the issue, biggest issue in my mind, is how the principal handles the information that he just received. I think he did not advise her to call the police. I think he should have. A statement like disappear implies a threat on a student or a teacher's life, and I think that's a police matter. Whether it's said verbally over the phone, whether it's said over the internet. I think he didn't really comfort her in any way. I think he just kind of dismissed it and said it was a prank, and knowing that she's very upset, I think he could have done a lot more over the phone. And ultimately, his plan is to meet with a student. Now, this student might be upset. Definitely the teacher is. I mean, if the student's getting called in for something, maybe that he didn't do. So we're going to meet with this teacher and the student. I just think that's, I said insane, but I think this is crazy to pull these people in without getting any other facts. I think the issue is he didn't gather any information. We're going to talk about it in a second. So now Miss Tate's going to be freaking out about her students or student in science class. And what if this kid didn't do it? Now, do we have, tort law coming in where we have maybe Miss Tate taking this into her own hands, kind of getting the revenge back on him without knowing any other information, kind of predicting here? Or what about malice intent? Could Miss Tate again slander this boy's name? I think those are two options that could happen and that could have definitely been prevented. What are my questions? Lots of questions. Why were the police not called? I think that's the first one. Why would the police not be called? I think that's the right away. I think even from Miss Tate's standpoint, I think she did follow the right chain of command, but I think we should be calling the police. Why was Dr. Smith not taking this as serious as he should have? It's a more serious issue. I don't know why he just dismissed it as a prank. We kind of go back to his reputation and not wanting to stir the pot, so maybe he was trying to downgrade this situation. Maybe he's seen something like this before. How do they know it was the student? Obviously the parents are upset too. Maybe the parents put something like this on. I can't imagine that, but you never know. Maybe it wasn't a student. Is there a better way of getting information prior to accusing or questioning a student? What can we do? We're going to talk about in the action plan what I think they should have done in getting information. And what I would give, personally, this isn't a question, but what I would give to be a fly on the wall in that meeting. But with the student, with William and Miss Tate and the principal, and just listening to the kind of questions that he would have been asking. And what happens if the student was like, no, that wasn't me, and had a good alibi? And then questioning the friends. And now we're putting all our eggs in that one basket, and the real accuser still being out there. What's my action plan? Well, I think I would have handled this a little bit differently. I would have definitely filed a police report. I would have had her file a police report. I would have told Miss Tate to call the police. I would have met her at the police station to show that I care, which I do, and say, hey, I'll walk you through this. We'll go through this together. Give my own police statement about how when she called me, making sure to print off that documentation. I think that was a great thing that they had that documentation. They printed it off for the meeting, but I think they could have printed it off and taken it too, along with sending the email and getting that email to the police. I think also you need to inform the superintendent of the situation. Next action plan step would be to gather more information. I think we need to review the school and the district policy on bullying and threats. I think prior to questioning a student, I would talk to my IT team and see where that takes me, see if I could gather any information, see if it was done on a school computer, school laptop, see if we could get that traced back. I know our IT team at Rock Creek and St. George, while not if it's at home, but if it's on school, they can do some different things to access them. And then talk with the police and see what they suggest we do. Is there anything we can do to kind of pin down someone that did this? Something else I would do. I would visit Miss Tate's classroom that next week just to observe in the classroom, and maybe even spin it as I'm observing Miss Tate and looking at the students, looking at their faces, seeing how they react in her classroom. You can tell a lot by just looking at students, if one of them did. Maybe I would bring the school police officer in to talk about the seriousness of threats to each individual class of Miss Tate's, or maybe even just as a school as a whole. Maybe I set up a counselor to present to the school on cyberbullying and the importance of words that we're putting out there that can never be deleted. They're always out there. They have that trick. I know we do a cyberbullying unit here at St. George. I'd also provide Miss Tate later down the road, after we calm down with more professional development. I think some good ones are Champs or Love and Logic, both very good. If it was the student, now we're saying that it was the student, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to follow the school policy. Rock Creek policy would be suspension. I know we've talked about zero tolerance, but as far as Rock Creek goes, suspension would be the policy. No sport competition for 20 days, as it is in the high school, 20 activity days. My personal, set up a meeting with the parents, trying to get on the same page, trying to, if it is a student, maybe it was William, set up a meeting with the counselor and the student to meet once a week, setting up some form of community service project. I really like that in one of the modules, setting up community service project, punishment fits the crime. While I was thinking, feeling, valuing, I was very sad for Miss Tate. I felt bad for her. I was mad at Dr. Smith that he didn't step up more. I'm confused for assuming that a student did this. Well, maybe not a student did this, but that one person did this, William, and kind of going after this student. I'm upset at the parents for putting all this stress on students. I'm upset that proactive measures maybe could have been taken to prevent this. Maybe we get her when we know that she's having trouble with students, that we send her to some professional development and we guide her a little bit more, maybe getting her a mentor. And then the unresolved issues at the end. I think everything's still up in the air in this case study. We don't know who did it. We assume. We don't know. We don't know if the precious reputation of the principal will be intact after this. More of a joke there. We don't know if Miss Tate will continue teaching. We don't know if any policies will be changed because of this. Thank you and have a great day.